Hey everybody, KC here. So there was a piece in the New York Times the other day that I wanted to draw your attention to because I think it teaches us all a lesson about business. And the piece was by a guy named Sam Dolnick. He's the deputy executive editor of the Times. And the headline immediately grabbed my attention was "The Man Who Kept the Times' Lights On." And it's a story about Donald Dimmock. And let me read a little bit for you from the piece. Readers of the New York Times know the names of our White House reporters and our foreign correspondents. Our podcast hosts, newsletter writers, and opinion columnists become as familiar as relatives. But few readers know the names of the people behind the scenes who make the Times possible. One of them died last month. His name was Donald Dimmick, and he worked for the Times for 33 years, much of that time as the general foreman for the electric department. Mr. Dimmick kept the lights on, along with everything else electric, for the production department, the newsroom, and the rest of the Times' building in Manhattan. The most important part of Mr. Dimmick's job was making sure the production equipment that printed the newspaper ran smoothly during the entire process, from the metal plate room to the loading docks. If something went wrong with one of the huge machines that printed the newspaper, Mr. Dimmick and his team of electricians had to fix it, and fast. The work spanned night and day, weeks and weekends. Mailroom stackers, strapping machines, metal plate stamps, flickering bulbs. If it was plugged in, it required his attention. Mr. Dimmick was there when the Times went digital in 1996, and he helped to oversee the print newspaper's transition to color in 1997. He saw the printing presses roll out front pages heralding historic moments. Men walk on the moon. Nixon resigns. The shuttle explodes. And Clinton impeached. And through it all, he carried extra machine parts just in case and wore a crisp white shirt and tie. Natasha Dimmick, his wife of 48 years, became so adept at cleaning ink-stained clothing that she opened a dry cleaning business. Now, the story mentions that Dimmick retired in 2001. But then after the September 11th attacks on the World Trade Center, his union, the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, Local Number 3, sent him down to work at Ground Zero, where, I quote again, he climbed through the rubble and the smoldering ash to help bring the Verizon building back online. The ruins were so hot that the rubber of his shoes melted. His doctors suspect that the exposure may have led to the cancer that killed him at 79. In fact, the 9/11 Victim Compensation Fund paid for his care. And this to me is it's such a great, first of all, how interesting is that? And by the way, that's all really, really great writing. But how interesting is it? There's this guy, and he's responsible for so much of how this business works. And we'd never heard his name. I mean, I've been reading the New York Times on a daily basis for 50 plus years. I never knew who Donald Dimmick was. And yet, in that organization, he was a hero because he quite literally, as well as figuratively, kept the lights on. And I think that's a really important thing for every business to remember, right? There are people who get a lot of attention. There are people whose faces are out there, whose voices are out there. There are CEOs who get paid a lot of money. But very often it's the people on the front lines who keep the lights on, who keep things running, who aren't necessarily recognized. They're the ones who are the really important people in any organization. These are the people who need to be paid attention to. These are the people who need to be embraced by any culture of caring that is going to exist in an organization. Because without that, well, an organization may work, but it lacks a certain amount of soul. I'm thrilled that the New York Times did this piece. You know, ironically, one of the things that Sam Dolnick points out is, by the exacting standards of the New York Times, his death wouldn't warrant an obituary. But they managed to fit it in by doing it in the Times Insider column. You know what I would think? I think they ought to reevaluate their standards for doing obituaries. You know, I can remember from starting out as an obituary writer for a local newspaper, that's the stuff that people read. I think the Times ought to reevaluate their standards. But I'm really glad that they found a way to bring attention to Donald Dimmick. Anyway, that's what's on my mind this morning. And as always, I want to hear what's on your mind.